I would like to go to the first panel so that we are guaranteed that we are in time. Please, Rafael.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rafael Maffei. I'm from DIREITO GV. I'm part of the Glee project, the Brazilian team. I will chair this panel, which is called Forming a Global Lawyer, Practical Dimensions and Political Discussions. I would just suggest a small change in the order of the speakers because Professor David Wilkins is here first as a speaker, and since Professor Wilkins has just made his
They're sick
remarks.
of me already.
No,
Please put me last.
So then, okay, all right. I would please ask all speakers to stick to the time limit, which is 10 minutes. It's not much, I know, but it's important that we get a chance to stay on schedule. I will slide the 5-minute paper when there's 5 minutes, and then the timeout. Professor Wilkins, it's in Portuguese, but large red letters mean you're in trouble in any language. So I will immediately give the word to Henry Stuttman from Pinheiro Neto Law Firm. Slide the microphone.
Henry. Good morning. I thank you very much for this kind invitation for the DIREITO GV members. I'm honored to be here. I got my business degree from GV Business School back in '91, and I got that together with my law school degree at São Francisco USP, but I just did that because this school didn't exist at that time. Because if it did, I was glad to have only one degree, a law degree from this GV Law School, because it indeed combines the two ways of thinking business law and transaction law in this country. And when I see that this seminar covers Brazilian legal profession in the age of globalization, my thinking is that there is going to be room, not only a room, but a share, and 4 groups of firms, in my view, will survive in Brazil in doing business and rendering service, legal services here in Brazil. My first view is one type of firm would be the global firms. They are here already. We have the limitations, the regulatory limitations are there, are here, but the firms, the global firms are here. This is reality. So if I were a student today, I would consider, and that's for sure, to step in at a global firm, because the global firm can handle the corporate work, the sophisticated cross-border transaction work, and this is a niche that I see those global firms, in my view, will succeed in Brazil. The second group of firms that, in my view, will succeed in Brazil are the leading local full-service law firms, like my firm. Like Pinheiro Neto, like Maitos Filho, like Tosini, like the Mareste, the big firms in Brazil. In my view, the global firms have some easiness to go into the corporate work and the transactional work, but they have some constraints and difficulties to handle the local work. The tax, the labor, the social security, the environmental, whatever, the litigation. It's hard for them, and the full-service law firm can handle not only this local legal work, but also the sophisticated cross-border transaction work and also the corporate work. And then I can see a third group of law firms that can survive and succeed in this globalization in Brazil, which are the boutique firms, the very specialized firms. They can handle sophisticated regulatory issues like oil and gas, like energy, like whatever. They can succeed as well. And I see room for them. So if I were a student in this room, I could also consider to join a boutique firm. And I think there is business for them. And the fourth group of firms that I can see room for growth in this globalization era is the firm who can handle the commodity work. I can see José Edgar Cunha Bueno, my friend here. The commodity work can be a very profitable business in Brazil for great clients. Because at the end of the day, what a client needs is cost-effective, very good, with very high quality legal services rendered. So I think that is it. And if we are here to provide this type of services to our clients, no matter what our client is, a Brazilian client or a multinational client, we are here to do so. So this is my my opening comment, and I wouldn't take long on this. I prefer to stop here and let
you have 5 minutes.
But you know, I prefer listen to my other colleagues, and then we can have a nicer debate here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I should mention that after the speakers give their lectures, we will have time for a discussion and debate. So next, Professor José Garcês Girardi from DIREITO GV.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. The ideas I will present here today appear in the Glee topic paper on legal education, which I have been writing with my good friends, Professor Luciana Gross Cunha and Fabiana Lucide Oliveira. When we talk about legal education, we have to face a number of thorny, difficult issues, which I believe also emerge in other dimensions of global exchange. Especially important among these issues is the central problems of offering a broader assessment of globalization, or globalizations in the plural, as some would prefer, and their often contradictory, opposing effects. For example, is globalization a primarily inclusive or exclusionary phenomenon? Does it work to level or to deepen differences between countries and within a single country? Does it enhance cultural diversity, or does it take one cultural model as paradigmatic? What are the practical and theoretical implications of the global-local tension it assumes and in many ways creates? These questions arise in our legal education research when we face the challenges of forming a global lawyer, a concept that in itself is not self-evident and invites some degree of disagreement. Be it as it may, whatever the concept of global lawyer one might want to embrace, it seems fair to say that all over the world, and in Brazil, India, and China, perhaps more acutely, to effectively perform in a corporate-led, globalized world, law professionals must have multiple skills. They must have a clear understanding of what kind of legal arrangement is most suitable to cross-borders, economically viable corporate activity. They must also be able to think law from a global rather than local perspective. They have to be educated to understand and respond to the challenges corporate-led globalization poses to their realities. Though, of course, comparatively recent, attempts to form such a lawyer have been taking place for some time now. The shapes they have taken and the strategies they have adopted mirror the broader issues about globalization I just mentioned. We suggest in our paper that to better understand them, these attempts should perhaps be broadly grouped according to A, the locus of the response, and B, the players involved in it. As for the locus, there are three main dimensions in which this educational process has taken shape in Brazil, India, and China particularly. A, within national borders. In this case, the effort to shape legal education to the new global scenario is carried on primarily by national institutions acting within their national borders. They may have some degree of contact or be inspired by foreign models, but these efforts are carried on by and remain entirely in control of local actors acting on their own. Changes in curricula and teaching methodology are a case in point, as are the creation of new schools and or other institutions for legal education, for example, continuous education programs, in-house seminars, etc. The designing and financing of such efforts is also carried on locally. A second dimension, abroad. Here, the core belief is that the global dimension of legal education is to be achieved out of your country, abroad, markedly in those countries more relevant to the interests of each individual big member. Law students are urged to complement their local training with a study period abroad, preferably at a prestigious institutions whose authority as a locus for legal education is immediately recognized by potential clients worldwide. This study period may or may not include some work experience and or success in the foreign bar exam. The option for this foreign solution necessarily involves some sort of formal or informal recognition by local governments, bars, and law firms, and the process and potential hurdles for such recognition has to be studied in each big country. A third spatial dimension, within a multinational space. This dimension involves some form of structured joint action by institutions from different countries. Contrary to what happened in the first example, they are jointly designed, financed, and carried on, and are shaped from the beginning as a multi-party effort. Joint degrees and LLM programs fall within this, as does the creation of a branch of foreign law schools in big countries, as for example the NYU program in Shanghai. This spatial dimension in every big country is made more complex by and should be analyzed alongside the role played in each of them by four major players. First, governments. They are crucially important not only in their direct regulatory control of legal education, but also in their facilitating or making more difficult the financing of each of the above options. They also play a key role in establishing the conditions for foreign degrees to be valid in the country and for foreign educational institutions to operate within their borders. 5 minutes. Oh, sorry. Okay. Right. I'll try to be fast. All right. I'm about to finish. Okay. Bar associations. Apart from their intrinsic role of controlling access to the professional practice, and thus their potential for influencing more or less directly the shape of legal education nationals should receive, they may have a prominent role in accrediting institutions and in interfering with the scope and nature of curriculum and methodology changes in legal education. They may also have a more or less formal role in overseeing the quality of teaching in law schools. In Brazil, for instance, they have a say in the Secretaria do Ensino Superior, and or in issuing guidelines for legal educations. Law schools, being the primary locus for legal education, they have been particularly affected by the new global scenario and its impact on law. Responses within and across individual countries might include, as seen above, the creation of new schools and more or less radical changes in curricula to meet the challenge of forming a global lawyer. However, they may also include strategic shifts to turn away from this global perspective and cater for a quite sizable public more interested in local practice. India and Brazil, for example, have a large number of law schools which focus on very local aspects of law, forming thousands of graduates who have no immediate interest nor perspective for acting in a global scenario. These institutions may point to the emergence or deepening of some sort of two-tier legal education model within big countries, which, if true, could be linked to the broader problems of what has been called the exclusionary dimension of globalization. Finally, law firms and in-house legal departments. Although not a locus for formal legal education, law firms and in-house legal departments of major corporations may play a role in determining the way law is taught in big countries. Their recruiting policies, preferring candidates coming from institution X or Y, not even considering graduates from Z, are arguably a major factor in shaping legal education in these countries. Grouping Brazil, India, and China under the big acronym has the charm and dangers of any oversimplification. On the one hand, it neatly highlights some important common points which are bringing these countries to a much more prominent role in world affairs than the one they just played. Booming economies, large young populations, increasing regional influence, etc. On the other hand, they dangerously hide the huge differences which set these countries apart. Examples of such disparities can be seen in virtually every aspect of life, from the format and workings of their political systems, to their economic strengths and weaknesses, to their social landscape. In legal education, these differences are also quite acute, which makes generalizations in this area particularly risky, as even a sketchy overview may show. These countries have markedly different legal traditions in both practice and teaching, and these necessarily affect the way they have been responding to the globalization of legal education. Glee research should therefore take into account the local history in legal education, highlighting those elements which are reputed more prominent in affect each country's response to changes in it. This will be useful not only to conveying important information on specific issues, but more important, in helping Glee participants address the difficult problem of assessing the manifold, intricate, and politically charged implications of the globalization process.
Basically, I was asked by Luciana and David to divide this mini presentation, because I know it's 10 minutes, in two stages from my perspective. Talk a little bit of my shift from working in a law firm to in-house counsel. And then the second part would be basically sharing my experiences as to what I think globalization has done on in-house practice. So just 1 or 2 minutes just to give you a little bit of my background. I worked during 18 years at Pinheiro Neto. I made partner, which was really cool. Everyone that's in a law firm usually wants to become partner. But at one point in time, I decided to see how it is to be on the other side, to be a client. So I took this courageous step in my life, and I joined Rabobank, which is basically a bank it's a global bank with lots of franchises all over the world, basically that does financing for the commodities for the food and agribusiness. So this shift has been quite challenging and very different. There are a few things that I guess we don't learn in law school, and if I can basically, I think, suggest to DIREITO GV, maybe in the future you guys can think of maybe doing a course or something for in-house people, because it is quite different than when you are working in a law firm. I think basically the soft skills that one would have to have in a law school, in a law firm, you need a little more when you're working in-house. And when I speak of soft skills, I'm talking about managing people. Not only managing your team of people, that basically you have that also in a law firm, but managing your internal clients, managing the frictions that you have between risk management, the commercial people. This is all. It's a people skill that you don't learn in school. You have to have know how to manage projects. In a global world, which you have global projects, which you have companies buying other companies or banks abroad or doing cross-border transactions, you have to learn how you have to deal with managing global projects. You also have to learn how to manage budgets. That's very, very different than a law firm. this cost pressure world that we live in is. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the second part. But managing budgets is also very challenging. Well, the good part, I think, everything is good, but I think the cool part of this is you are seen as a business partner for your internal clients. I think that when you're in a law firm, you're more like a fire extinguisher. So, you know, they call you up and you have to just resolve the issue. When you're in-house, you get to be sort of a business partner because you have to understand so much of the business that you basically are working for. So that's also something that you don't learn in school. And also practical advice. You have to be fast. They want your answer now, and you really do have to think practical. Which, again, when you're on the other side, sometimes, you know, writing all those big, long memorandums and thinking more like technically, sometimes doesn't work for in-house counsel. I guess the effects of globalization. It's only been a year, but I can basically tell you what I have faced and my opinions as to globalization and in-house practice. Rabobank is a bank that has franchises all over the world. And so I think the task here for in-house is learning basically the ability to analyze different cultures. I speak with legal in-houses from Singapore, from New York, from India, from the Netherlands. Rabobank is a Dutch bank. And it's very, very interesting, and you have to have this skill, how to analyze cultures, how do they do business, how to integrate cross-border transactions. And I think this is part of the globalization. I think there's one thing, and I'm finishing here, but basically relationship with law firms. Maybe you don't see this when you're working in a law firm, but in a global world, sometimes you have global law firm fee arrangements in which, let's say, the global heads require local in-house counsels to use the global firm that Rabobank, for example, uses. And that causes a bit of friction sometimes because, as he says, sometimes you don't want to use that global firm. One, it may be more expensive. Two, the global firm may not understand your local needs. So this is something also that I see a lot, and I talk to other in-house colleagues, and they also see this happening to them. Again, I think the cost pressure is managing our budgets and the cost pressure that we have. Each day more, we want to work with good people, but that do not charge that much. I know it's very hard, and when I was on the other side, it was very, very tough. But I think maybe one day we can sit together and I can tell you a bit more of the experiences. That's it. And thank you very much for having an in-house vision in this panel.
Thank you very much. Now we have José Edgar Bueno and Renato Mandalici from JBN Mandalici Law Firm.
So thank you, everyone here, and in the name of Dr. Ariosvaldo Matos Filho, I would like to thank you, Getúlio Vargas, for the invitation and to share with you this experience that we are facing in our model, which have been a lot of people talking about. So, first of all, when we design our model, we thought a lot about the strategic cornerstones, because based on that, we designed the model and then the operation. Usually lawyers like to start with the operation and go all the way around and then discuss the strategy. So we discussed a lot before. So what we have here is the scenario and the premises in which we are based upon. So we saw, and everyone, that's not any news, but Brazilian economy is booming, which leads to a lot of international and also huge Brazilian groups consolidating the market, which leads to a very strong Class C, middle class, becoming part of the system, okay, which leads to more goods, more services, more employment. So, and that necessarily goes to conflicts. When we have this huge scenario in which we have goods and millions of people becoming part of the system, so we see a lot of conflicts. When we were designing our model, we thought a lot about the legal industry way of thinking what is a law firm. So we have been discussing here a lot about the conventional model. So I came from a very conventional and very conservative model of law firm, okay, which is the trend. I'm not criticizing that, but it is the way it works. So we try to think a little bit out of the box. So and that is important for when you start to doing a new type of business, a commodity business. So and then we the business model leveraging to new ventures. So we have to think about scale, efficiency, and national presence when we start to do a business like we have. So this is the draft, so strategy, business model, and operation. So Renato, let's go ahead. This is the business model that we have today. So thinking on that strategy, this is the way that we shape our business. So we have a service provider, which is a company who thinks, so it is the center strategy, the planning, everything in terms of control, management, finance, human resources, IT is put inside this service provider because it can share costs to all the other operations. So, and then we have what JBM is. So we have these 4 types of types, no, they are brands, indeed. So what JBM does, JBM does mass litigation, basically, and we sell ourselves in this brand to the clients as a mass litigation law firm. We have all the structure also to do what usually the Americans do a lot, which is LPO. LPO is basically the outsourcing of what the internal, the in-house counselors do not like to do. So it is not the core business of the company. Exactly. So, and it is is a commodity. So they outsource that kind of work to a type of law firms, okay, or legal service providers like us. So we do a lot of due diligences. We think in this type of business in a very, very organic growth. Okay, so we cannot be huge as we are without thinking of having people coming inside. And we saw the first chart here that we have 1,000 law schools in Brazil. So we have a huge offer of law students and lawyers coming into the system. So we like to put these people here inside and start the organic growth. The whole, and everything is based upon economy of scale, and we have a national presence, as we're going to see in the next chart. The other brand that we have is Mandalite Advogados, which is a much more it's a niche. It's a niche law firm, which is has a very strong presence in the insurance business, handles high-end litigation and high-end consulting in different areas of law. It has a very, very interesting thing that we have to mention. We do not design Mandalite Advogados in practice areas as we see in major law firms. We design internally our approach as an industry approach. So we have people there first specialized and with an expertise in for instance, in oil and gas or environment no, but in insurance and very, very specific issues. We also have an organic growth in these new business segments, and we managed to handle fees flexibility because we are able to share costs with all this structure. So we do not need a specific IT person here. We do not need a human resource person here. So we share costs with everyone. And then we have the collecting service company. So these RF Cobranças is basically a company which is designed to collect receivables that we have from our clients, and it's basically a collective service company. And there is a lot of opportunity here because the market, and this market here is talking about a lot of M&As. So the consolidation of this market is going to be a trend, okay? So we saw that as a very, very good opportunity, and we have a very organic growth on this as well. And then here we have something that we see as a very, very good opportunity for the future. We are not practicing this here because we have problems with the Bar Association. Bar Association do not allow that, and we know that. We are discussing with that with them. But it is a sort of a prepaid legal service that has in everywhere in the world. So we have in Europe that, for instance, in Europe, this business here manage $4 billion per year, okay, in all jurisdictions and countries in Europe. We have also that in the US, we have that in Chile, we have that in Mexico. So it is something that we should think about and should be prepared to do that, okay? Although we know and we respect that there is some regulatory constraint on that. So that is our structure today. We have 26 branches in these, which are owned branches in Brazil, spread out over these states. Okay, these branches are managed and controlled by us. Okay, in this area here, which are in white, we do not have our own branches, but we outsource the service to local law firms that we have long-standing relationships. But our idea and our strategy, as I mentioned, is to be present all over the country. We have 1,700 employees, okay, 853 lawyers, and the rest are interns and legal assistants, and we have around 700 administrative and back office people, okay? And these, to finalize, is our numbers, which just to give you a flavor on what we are doing today. So we handle today almost 300,000 cases in our stock, okay? We received monthly 15,000 new cases, every month. And we close other 13,000, something like that. And it's very, very important. We handle today an average of 11,000 hearings per month in all these jurisdictions. So it is a business that depends upon a lot on the logistics, on the control, and on managing on, and everything that we think is thinking about not only as a law firm, which is important as well, but also as a legal service company, which is a concept that it is a little bit broader, and it is something that we think that is useful to share with the market today. So that's it. Thank you very much. I had to be very.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
José Edgar. Now, Professor Wilkins.
So, thank you, and thank you for those terrific presentations. Let me just say a few things, and then I hope we'll have time to have discussion from the audience. I think everything you heard today is symptomatic of three big changes that we see going on, not just here in Brazil, but around the world in terms of the way the market for legal services is changing. The first is what you might call, the economists would say, a reduction in information asymmetry between buyers and sellers. What that means simply is that the buyers are becoming much more sophisticated. And you heard Daniela speak about that. She was very nice to her former partner, Henry. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that someone like her is now the general counsel of a major corporation is going to change dramatically the way in which great law firms like Pinheiro Neto interact with those clients. It used to be that the client, the law firm interacted with someone who was not very sophisticated. Now that person is equally as sophisticated as the person providing the service. The second big trend is what you might call the unbundling or repackaging of services that used to come all together. For the young people here, think the way you buy your music, if you buy it at all. It used to be that you used to have to go to a store called a record store, and you used to have to buy this big round thing called a record, which then got smaller and it was called a CD, and you bought the whole thing to buy only one song. The rest you didn't like very much, but you had to get the whole thing because it came all packaged together. Now, you go to iTunes, again, if you buy your music, and you just pick the songs you want. That's unbundling. That's happening all over the economy and is happening to legal services, so that you now don't just go to a full-service law firm. Henry says, yes, you can have a full-service law firm that can provide a range of services, but as Henry also acknowledged, you can have a boutique law firm that is excellent in one aspect of the law. You might take that there and then go to a great law firm like Pinheiro Neto for other aspects of your work. Or you may take some aspects that are high volume, low end parts, what we might call commodity parts, and you take them to JBM or Mandalici. I think I've had the privilege of listening to José Edgardo and Renato before. If you haven't heard this before, it is a revelation. I saw some jaws dropping and eyes going very wide around the table. But this is the future, because technology allows you to take things that previously had been all put together and to spread them to different providers, not just nationally, but globally. And again, you could see that this is happening in all other parts of the economy. It is now beginning to happen dramatically here. The final big change is that the consumers of legal service are measuring the value of those services less by the inputs, like who did them, where did they go to law school, how many hours did it take, and more by the outputs, i.e., what was the value to me? How much did it allow me to do what I'm trying to do in my life? That, as José Garcés indicates, has tremendous consequences for legal education, because we're not just looking at the prestige of the institution. We're looking at what is it that is being delivered, and how is that going to help me to do what I want to do in my law practice, in my general counsel's office, in my outsourcing and offshoring operation. And for the students, for the young people, they also want to know what the output of that education is as that education is becoming more expensive. Let's just be honest. It's becoming more expensive all over the world for many reasons, which are in fact legitimate, but nevertheless, it means that people have to think a lot about what the output, about what they're going to get from that education. So I think we've heard terrific examples of these big trends that are going on here in the world today, and I think I'll just end there, and I'd love to hear what other people have to say about what they've heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Due to the ruthless timekeeping, we are perfectly on schedule, so we can now open up for questions and remarks that anyone might have from the audience, from the table. Ronaldo. Ô Fred, passa o microfone para ele, por favor.
Well, one of my concerns is about what is the best strategy for this kind of more interdisciplinary approach to legal education. Sometimes I'm a little bit skeptic about this idea of double degree, in the sense that, for example, this traditional strategy, taking a law degree and a business degree, sometimes represents for the students wasting a lot of time in a very technological disciplines, or sometimes even having to face so many, such a difficult and complex schedule of hours. And I'm not really, most of the time I'm kind of suspicious of this strategy. So I'd like to hear from you, from the practice, from the market. How do you evaluate this strategy of the students? How would you recommend a young student to take this more soft skills? Would it be to go for a more interdisciplinary law school, or would it go to, even in a more interdisciplinary law school, would you encourage someone to take a double degree or not? This is my...
I think not anymore, because it's a mindset. If you, in a law firm, in a business-oriented law firm, it is crucial that you hire business-oriented students. And I think Direito GV covers this lack, because the most traditional education, like students, law students from USP, PUC, Mackenzie, the traditional law schools, are also very good students, and we hire them a lot as well. And we are them, and they are great. But they are great. But from like 3 years from now, we've been hiring students from this school, and they have actually a different mindset. They have a different schedule they have a different program, and they are trained to think out of the box, as José Edgar said, and we can now mix these two types of backgrounds, or two types of levels of education. as I mentioned to you, we valued the double education, the combination of business and law 20 years ago. That's why I did those. But we don't value that much nowadays, because when we want to mix, we come to this school and we get the students.
Yeah.
I just would like to add a point there. I think your question was very interesting, and I was thinking about this the other day and talking to my daughter. Of course, she's 11 years old, and she was kind of confused about what I was saying. And but if I had it, I spent 18 years in a big law firm, and I was thinking to myself, so if I had the chance to go back, would I make anything different? I think I would. I think, you know, if you want to be a lawyer, you want to know the law, you want to know the business of your client. But I think now we need thinkers. We need people to think, as Jose said, outside of the box. So I would probably go for a second degree that is not completely related to law, like philosophy or something like that, that can open our mindset of lawyers, which is quite interesting but very limited to certain issues. So I wouldn't only focus on law and business degree. I would go beyond that if I could.
Professor Trubeck.
As someone who followed the history of this school from before it started, and even before that, I'm delighted to hear the encomia that are being given, the well-deserved encomia of the school. And I think that it's understandable that the education at the school like this could replace the 2-degree strategy that was followed because there was no school like this. And now there are 50 students a year for a country of how many million people? 190 million people. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. So I think my question is, agreeing that it would be better from a law firm point of view and from a student's sort of life choice and economy of time training, what are the chances that this option will be available outside of this very small enclave? Or to put it another way, are the changes that have occurred here have much of a chance of occurring in the existing schools? One of the great things about this school, and I think one of the secrets of its success, was it didn't exist before, so that they could start from scratch, and they didn't have tradition, and sort of, and I think that was, frankly, a tremendous advantage. Now, you can't do that for the rest of Brazil. So that's my question. What are the prospects that these kinds of changes will diffuse enough into enough schools so that the law firms, because you could gobble up half of the graduates of this, you see what I mean? I throw that back to the lawyers.
Alice, quer falar alguma coisa ou não? Well, I think this is one of the largest challenges. We are happy with what we did, and we are being very successful, and I think I didn't know them, so they're not my friends that are just saying this too. But I think what is happening is that we are producing a different kind of professional that is not only business-oriented, but also have a social science. I saw some of you saying, well, social science and philosophy. Ronaldo is our professor of philosophy and ethics. But I think that the major difference is not the business, social science, or philosophy, is that students are daily challenged by complex problems. They understand that this will be the rest of their lives. We enter a classroom and say, here is a problem, as complex as we can put for them. And I think in the end, when they arrive at your bank or at your law firm, when you ask them to do a research in something, they say, well, wonderful, this is what I was trained for. So they feel very comfortable with the challenge. So just to get back to the point that you were. What the effect of Direito GV in Brazil, or not just in Brazil, but in other countries, other developing countries. As you see, we have too many law schools. Most of them are not really worried about producing real professionals. They are night schools where people go and they fulfill their time. One of my colleagues here, when I was criticizing this, he said, well, but it decreased the number of violence against women. And they said, do you think it has this moral effect? No, because men are not at home at that time. So it has several byproducts, these law schools. People get more educated, they have a better notion of the rule of law, so they fulfill a social function. It's not useless. I do think so. And people get happy because they are lawyers. If they are a cashier, they will become better cashiers or whatever. But what about the group of law schools that are really fighting to form the elite lawyers in the country? I think many of them have been impacted. The new generation of professors, if you take in USP, and you know some of them, are dealing inside and struggling inside USP because they understand what is happening with their law schools. If you take the new schools that are being forming today, like USP Ribeirão Preto, take a look on their curriculum. Take a look on the full-time requirements. Take a look on the way they are approaching. So I think it is having an impact. If you take FACAMP, which is also a new law school and that is having a lot of impact. So take the 1,000 out of your head and think on 80 law schools. That not that matters, but matters for preparing a new generation of jurists. And I think several of them, there's a political struggle. As we started here, there's a political struggle because those who have power over legal system, in fact, have power over other things. So there is a political struggle that we are involved. So it's not easy to influence others. There is resistance. But I think there are some people that are moving. They will not reproduce our model, but they will renovate their own models. And I think this is wonderful. So there are opportunities for different change. Just a footnote on that is the programs that we are investing at this moment, and several in this room are involved, on transferring and opening our methodology, technology, and our materials. So we have now a program by which Professor Garcês will not just provide free of cost its materials to someone in Amazon that wants to teach a course on legal education or in other issues, but he will have an interlocutor through the internet by which he can. So we are trying to reach out. So I think this is one perspective. It's not our responsibility to move the whole legal system, the whole legal education system, but I think we can open and benefit others by doing this, and we are engaged on it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or remarks? No? Oh, Bruno. Vitor, passa para ele.
Morning. My name is Bruno Salama. I'm a law professor here. I'm a speaker in the afternoon, but I'm not involved with the Glee project specifically. I don't know much about it. I recently wrote a small article about lawyers, and by coincidence, I was invited to be here. And with that said,
Not by coincidence. By coincidence, you wrote the article.
By coincidence, I wrote the article. And because I have written an article that was strictly related to what we are discussing today, then therefore I was invited to be here. And I'm happy to be here. And I'm thankful for the invitation. Now, with that said, I was trying to think about what are the most hot political issues that are underneath the surface of a cordial conversation that we are all glad to have here. And definitely one of them is the coming of foreign law firms into Brazil. And I would like to ask Professor Wilkins his views on that, and whether he has a stance on that, and whether Glee is strictly connected to funding that is connected to that, because that's the question that maybe other people here have in mind.
Thank you. I'm happy to address that question. Let me do it in 3 ways. First, let me take the last part of your question first. As I tried to emphasize, the purpose of Glee, its major purpose is to provide independent, objective, empirical research on the changes going on in the profession. That means that we are deeply committed not to be doing research on the basis of any particular point of view in the process. This is a independently funded initiative. It's funded from many sources. I can't tell you that no one who funds the initiative doesn't have a view. There may be many views about the people who are funding the initiative, but the initiative is being funded from people around the world who have many views on this subject. And the reason they are investing in us is exactly that they are committed to the idea that the role of academic institutions can play is a different role than any other party in this dialogue can play. Even wonderful organizations like my friend here, or the Bar Association, or the Chamber of Commerce, or the ministries, they have, as we sometimes say in the southern part of the United States, a dog in this hunt. That means they have an interest. We, as an academic institution, have no interest other than the trying to understand phenomena that we think are incredibly complex. Now, so that's point number 1. If anybody thinks that this is an initiative that's either being sponsored or fostered or driven by some particular point of view, it's false. And quite frankly, if it were, I wouldn't be interested in doing it. This is why I have lifetime tenure at an academic institution. It is to provide that independence. Point number 1. Point number 2, do people like me have ideas about what's happening in the world today? I don't think you'd want us if we didn't have ideas. We have ideas, we have opinions, but that's not why we're here. Now, I'm happy to talk about what I see in the world today. My own view is this question of foreign law firms is an incredibly complicated one because it operates on multiple levels. I mean, I guess I would start with what Henry said. Foreign law firms are here, not just here in Brazil, they're in India. India has the most restrictive laws against foreign law firms in the world. That is, you can't have an office, you can't, not only can you not practice Indian law, you can't practice what they call home country law. And yet, Linklaters has 150 Indian-trained Indian lawyers doing Indian transactions sitting in Hong Kong and Singapore and London, and they fly in and they stay at the Taj for 2 weeks when they close the deal. Is that good or bad? I don't know. That's not my judgment. I can tell you what I could say is going on. I think in every country, including my own, let's start back from here. The United States has one of the most protectionist legal markets in the world. I'm a Massachusetts lawyer. I cannot practice law in Connecticut. For those of you who don't know, Connecticut is the state adjacent to Massachusetts without taking another kind of licensing exam. That's a form of, you could call it protectionism, you could call it the advantage of licensing, of lawyers who understand the local jurisdiction. Our goal here is simply to explore the realities of what's going on the ground as objectively and independently as we can, to provide information for policymakers, decision makers, legal educators, bar associations, associations of law firms, practitioners, through which they can make judgments. I don't want to be, the one thing, I'm not trying to say there's some objective, neutral social science in the world for which there are no history and background doesn't matter. So I'm happy to talk about my own history and my own background. But I'm also insistent that that's the purpose of this project.